Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the Classroom Matters podcast. And today I am delighted to be continuing a series that we have started, and we are going to be talking today. In the first episode, we really hit the overview of what Homeworks was, what they're doing, and their impact on the community and the school districts. And today we're going to jump in, and I have Colleen Polak, the CEO of the Homeworks organization, back with us. And in today's episode, we're really going to dive into parent engagement and what that looks like from both sides of the education piece and from the parent piece. So, Colleen, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really great talking with you so far and sharing about Homeworks and all the great work that can happen within the community and supporting schools and parents.
Yeah, these have been some really great conversations, and it has been so awesome just to get to know you and get to know Karen and what you guys are doing. And if you don't mind, if you could just give our listeners a really quick overview of what Homeworks is, what you guys do there, kind of a little bit about the story of how it got started and what your current reality of the work that you're doing is before we jump into our topic.
Sure. Yeah. Homeworks we really exist to address that need out there of kids coming to school behind and then schools not having the tools, resources, and supports that they need to provide families what they need so kids can catch up. And so what we do is we improve educational outcomes for children by creating lasting, impactful, and meaningful partnerships between school and home. We get parents and teachers and school administrators all working together on the same page, working towards the same common goals so that everybody is wrapping around a child and a student so that they have what they need to be successful at school. And by success, that doesn't just mean academics. It's really important to us that we are really working to support the whole child. And so that can be behavioral outcomes, relationship outcomes, attendance, in addition to those very important and critical academic pieces.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what you're doing is really just being an extra resource for those kiddos that are struggling, they're not able to get to school, and you're bringing the teachers to them in a lot of instances.
Right. And one of the things that I think is so great about what we do at Homeworks is that we center ourselves on equity and listening to parents. So we have interviews with parents, we conduct surveys with parents, we have focus groups with parents. So we can really listen to them and what the barriers are that they're encountering and listen to them about what their needs are so that we can then work with the school to address those so the kids are showing up to school every day and that when they show up, they are prepared to be at school every day. And that when kids then are in the classroom and they've got the support of their parents at home backing them up, they're doing better in class, they're behaving better in the classroom, and teachers are seeing a shift and a change just even in that classroom culture.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking a lot about parents. You're talking about a lot about what's happening at home, which is a really great segue into our main topic for this episode, which is parent engagement. Now, I know that as educators and people in school districts and private school settings and all across different educational settings, we use the term parent engagement a lot. So, can you just start by talking about what actually do you mean at Homeworks when you talk about parent engagement and what does that look like?
That's a really important point because there is a plethora of research and articles and different organizations and schools that all talk about parent engagement. And when you really dive into it, a lot of the different places mean a different thing by saying parent engagement. And so when we at Homeworks think about parent engagement when we're working with our schools, we really differentiate between parent involvement and parent engagement. And so parent involvement can be just that showing up, which is very important and is a critical foundation to get to parent engagement. So parent involvement can look like I come to parent teacher conferences every other quarter. And that can be an example of like parent involvement. And what we work with our schools to do is elevate that involvement to true engagement where there is like I said, that lasting, impactful partnership between school and home. And so this looks like increased communication between school and home. This looks like the parent calling the teacher to say, hey, this came home in the backpack and I don't really understand it, or my daughter's really struggling with it. What can we do to help her? Or the teacher feeling comfortable to call the parent to say, hey, Jamal came to school today and just something seemed off. Is everything all right at home? And so there is this real relationship and trust between the parents and the teachers that's happening that leads to this increased level of engagement so that parents and teachers are all working together to support the students so they can be successful in school.
Mhm. Well, I think it's really interesting that, and I was taking notes as you were talking because I'm really glad that you sort of defined parent involvement versus parent engagement, because I feel like a lot of times parents will say, "Well, I went to parent teacher conferences. I went to the play. I went to the school, picnic. So I'm engaged." And so there is really such a critical difference between just showing up and attending an event and really being fully immersed and engaged with the students and the teachers and what's going on, because your child's there the entire day, right? And I know that we um a lot of times parents, and I've been guilty of this myself, said, "Oh, well, they're at school. That's a school thing. That's a teacher's deal. I'm not going to I'm not getting involved in that." So why is it so critical for this engagement to take place?
Right. And so one of the things that blew me away when I first started at Homeworks was I learned about how much time kids really spend in school in Missouri. And when you take into account summer and you take into account the weekends and you take into account the evenings and all of that time when kids are not in the school building, that is 86% of their life is spent outside of school. And that is such an opportunity for further enrichment and learning and growth to happen. And so when and I'm a parent too, and I'm guilty of it too, to step back and say, oh, thank goodness they're going to school today. Like they're going to take care of it. She's going to learn to read there. Math will take care of itself, right? Because that's what the teachers are there for. They're the experts. And what we've learned through Homeworks and really work on is that, our kids are only in school 14% of their year. And we can't rely on teachers to meet 100% of the students' educational needs in 14% of the time. And so that's why parents and home is so critical, and why that connection between school and home is so critical. Because the way for engagement to be most effective is if the parents know and understand what they should be working on and should be doing at home to best support what is happening at school in the classroom. And so that's where Homeworks comes in to really support schools in creating those relationships with parents. So we bring training, we bring support staff, we bring tools, we bring resources, we bring funding, because a lot of times the districts aren't putting the resources to this because they have so many other competing priorities that they can't even focus on this wholly right now. So we come in and bring those tools and resources and supports so that teachers learn what they can do to effectively engage parents and not just have them involved.
Hmm. Have you seen a shift in your organization since the pandemic in parent engagement? Have you seen it go more one way or more the other?
Yeah, actually, we've seen it increase, which has been a really pleasant surprise. And we see that not just from our side with Homeworks, with what we're doing with parents and interacting, but we hear that from our teachers as well. And what we've learned and heard is that having that virtual option for connection has been really important to breaking down barriers for those families that are hard to reach. There are, our families, especially in the schools and the districts that Homeworks is supporting, like our families have a lot of barriers. They're often working multiple jobs, and those shift work can be opposite of when the teacher is available sometimes to be able to go to the home in person. And so by having a virtual option, parents are able to participate and engage at levels they were not able to before. One of our critical program components that we do to help parents become more engaged and know what they can do at home to support learning are parent teacher workshops. And for these, grade level parents get together and the teachers actually teach the parents what they're teaching their student. And so the parent knows, oh, this is what they're learning in class right now, so I can help with the homework. I can work at the child with my child at home so they can be successful in school. And when we started to offer a virtual option for those workshops, we saw attendance go up. And when we asked parents why, they're like, well, I was able to just log on from work, where if I had to come in person, I couldn't have left work and took that much time off. And so it's been really a silver lining for us in the midst of something that's been very challenging and very devastating for so many people, that we have learned another way to reach out to our families.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that that's so it's well, one, I want to go back to, something that you said right off the bat was that you've seen it increase since, the parent engagement has increased since the pandemic. And I was sitting here thinking, well, part of that too is, these parents have had these children at home now, a lot of them, and they have so much more respect for teachers, knowing exactly what they're dealing with every day. And I think that it really shook us up in maybe a good way for parents and teachers to say, okay, we really truly are in this together, because there for a while, the first 6 months, year of this pandemic that we all just went through, teachers were thrown into teaching it virtually, kids were thrown into, being at home, being at school, being back home, being hybrid. So we really had to work together for the same goal. And we were just forced. And so, yeah, I think now though, parents are like, okay, I get it. Teachers are great. I respect them so much more now. But do you also think that traditionally, there's sometimes been a divide between the school and the home where things that like what you mentioned with teaching the parents what the kids are learning in school, sometimes that's hard for parents to sort of be okay to say, I don't know, understand this material. I haven't done that, and so it's hard for parents to call up the teacher and say, well, I tried to help my son or daughter with their homework, but I didn't get it. That's hard for parents, and I think that with, what you're doing with the workshops and things like that, it's really making it okay to not have all the answers, making it okay to need to reach out to the teacher, and the teacher being okay with meeting the parent where they are. I think so many times we're like, well, the parent needs to come, the parent needs to show up. It's the parent's responsibility. But it
Mhm.
sounds like what you guys are doing is you're really just sort of evening out the playing field.
Yeah, and trust is so important in this relationship between school and home, because parents, in order, and for any of us, in order for us to be able to admit that we may not understand something as well as we wish we could, like, that makes us really vulnerable, right? To be able to do that, and that's hard to do with someone that you don't trust, especially someone who you think is going to judge you because you should know something, or you feel like you should know something. And so when that's why the holistic aspect of our program with homeworks is so important, because it's not just, okay, come to a workshop and learn, now go home and do it. And it's not just, oh, we have this lovely family event, so come to the school and have a meal and meet the teacher. And it's not just the home visits, it's putting all of those things together so that we're building trust, building relationships, so that these tough conversations can happen. And we have heard from parents, as I said, we're always surveying our parents and reaching out to them, that they appreciate that, and that before having the home visit or before having the workshop, they, one, didn't know what they could do at home, and two, didn't know that they even had the capacity or the capability or the education. Many of our parents may not have even graduated from high school themselves, and so they think, what do I have to give? And they have so much to give. I mean, our parents are our kids' first teacher, they are our child, kids' best advocate, and there's so much that they can offer. And when what really gets me so like makes me feel so good oftentimes about what we're doing is when we get to change parents' mindsets and their thoughts about how important they are to their kids' educational journey and success. And that is transformative when it comes to what our program is really bringing to schools and families.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a great point about making parents feel really important because they are, and I don't think we've given the parents enough credit over the years as educators. And so it's amazing to see how you are changing that in the schools and with the folks that you're working with. So let's talk about how parent engagement links to student academics, student behavior, those types of things, because really it all does work together. So, how are you seeing parent engagement linking to those other areas of the child?
So, the first thing that we see as parent engagement increases is that communication between school and home increases, and that everybody feels better about the relationship. For example, if they're a parent who has negative feelings about school as it being a place where they weren't taken care of, or they weren't happy, or the only time they hear from school is when something negative is going on, right? We flip that. We're like, no, this isn't about just like tattletaling or talking about negative things. This is about how do we help your child grow. And so when parents see that and that relationship starts to develop, they feel better about school and are more likely to then become even more engaged. And then the kids see that their parents and teachers are talking. So they come to school like, one, excited that they had a home visit. They come to school and they talk about it and they're like, my teacher was in my house yesterday and I got to show her to my dog. They get excited about coming to school and talking about that. But they also know mom and my teacher are talking, and so I'm going to behave better. So those are two things that happen fairly quickly that our teachers observe, and we see that anecdotally from the teachers, but is also research based and supported. So the Institute of Education Sciences released a report earlier this year. It's looking specifically at the impact of home visits on behavior and attendance. And what they found is that just one home visit improves behavior in the classroom and increases attendance. And that's just one home visit. And we're doing 2 home visits and workshops and family events at the school. And so we're really excited as we look at data longitudinally, to see the real big change and impact that can happen year over year over year as students and families get this kind of engagement support. Now, academics are a little bit harder and different. They take longer. So I said, like, you can see attendance and behavior shifts fairly quickly. You can see mindset shifts start to happen fairly quickly within that first year. But the academics, most of the research supports that it takes about 5 years to see a real appreciable difference in academics for students whose parents become more engaged.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, understandably, that takes a little bit, but the parent engagement is the first step, because if the kids aren't showing up to school, and if they do show up, they're not having appropriate behaviors, all of that has to happen first. And I think you mentioning the mindset is so important as well, because it really truly is a mindset. When you go from a school district or a home environment where you are separating yourself from your child's educators, to an environment where the teacher's coming to your house and you're talking all the time and you're having this positive communication, obviously that is going to make the situation better, for everyone involved, because it really is. We're all in that. It's not just the child's experience, it's the parents' experience with that child, it's the teacher's experience with that family. And so it sounds like you're just making it better all the way around, a better experience for everybody involved. Sometimes I feel like we do school because it's what we're supposed to do, and we don't enjoy the experience, we don't enjoy the journey, the day-to-day things of it. But it sounds like you're sort of changing that to where this is a pleasant experience. Kids enjoy it, teachers enjoy it, parents enjoy it, and that's so important.
Absolutely. And that's the goal, right? Is that everyone is more likely to do something, whatever that happens to be, if it's fun and if you enjoy it and if you get good feelings out of it. And it's not a slog. It's not something you dread, right? And so we don't want our families and our kids to feel that way about school. None of us do. Our teachers want, they're doing bending over backwards to make school a welcoming and fun and engaging place for kids. And so we're by being able to come in and provide that extra layered level of support for teachers and schools so that everybody's mindsets can change and feel better about their whole experience is really rewarding for us. And one thing I'll add to that too, you talked about how it can change the relationship between school and home and for that family and that student and that teacher, but it also impacts the entire classroom. Because if you think about how disruptive it is to the other students in the classroom when one student is acting out, or if the teacher is constantly having to backtrack in lessons because there's a student or a couple students who are chronically absent. And so the teacher has to keep backtracking and reteaching things. The students who aren't having those behavior or attendance issues are still having a detriment from the other kids in the classroom that's happening. So when we can help address those barriers to good behavior and attendance for those some students in the classroom who those might be issues, it doesn't just help those students, it helps the whole classroom be more successful.
Yeah. Well, Colleen, thank you so much. And so we are going to wrap up our conversation on parent engagement. But next time, when we meet with the Homeworks organization, we're going to wrap up our 4-part series in our next session. And we are really going to take a deep dive into student attendance, student behaviors, student academics, and how the Homeworks organization is tackling all three of those things and how all three of those things, how important they are and how they connect. So, Colleen, thank you so much for joining us to talk about parent engagement today with the Homeworks organization.
All right, thank you so much. And I'll just plug in there that if anyone wants to learn more about Homeworks or see some of the resources that we have for parents, we have a parent page on our website at teacherhomevisit.org, and there are also teacher resources there as well.
That's so great. So thanks, Colleen. And don't forget, everyone listening, to jump in and join us for our next session with the Homeworks organization. This is Kristy Houle signing off for this episode of the Classroom Matters podcast.